Hey, everybody. Last Sunday was another wonderful week at Thomas Road, and the worship was powerful, and I had the privilege of speaking to our congregation about being salt and light. Right now we're in this worship series or sermon series called Compass, and it's really just a recap and a teaching on the Sermon on the Mount, the greatest sermon ever preached. The week prior, Pastor Jonathan talked about the Beatitudes, character traits that every believer needs, and so on the heels of that, Jesus begins to just teach on what it is to be the salt of the earth or the light of the world. And they're both incredibly crucial. And the one thing that's really important to note about that teaching is that there's not really an option in those two metaphors that Jesus uses. They're incredibly important metaphors because salt and light were two of the most important things in that day and age for anyone, because salt was such a precious commodity. But light, of course, is what gives us life. Those two metaphors Jesus uses as salt and light as an example for what we're to be. When Jesus says you are the salt of the earth, what he means is you're the seasoning, you're the flavor. But salt also stings a little bit when you come in contact with it. So in a sense, you're almost like, as a believer, sort of the conscience of those around you. Because you live a life of conviction. Salt also heals because even though it stings a little bit, it's part of that stinging that brings the healing process. You're salt of the earth because salt is a preservative. As a preservative in our society, it's part of our job as Christians to delay the decay in our culture by living the truth and being an example of what the truth is. Another thing that salt does is it fertilizes. Jesus says you are the salt of the earth. Another word for that is soil. And what they would do often in those days is use potassium chloride, not sodium chloride, but potassium chloride. And they would use this and place it over dirt as potash to help good things grow. But they would also use salt as a disinfectant. Jesus in the book of Luke chapter 14 reminds us that they would pour it over the dunghill or in places of refuse or waste because it would keep bad things from growing. So salt is a preservative, it's a fertilizer, it makes good things grow, but it's also a disinfectant in that it keeps bad things from growing. And this is what Jesus meant when he called us the salt of the earth. What a powerful metaphor for how you and I should live our lives. And then of course he uses this metaphor of being light of the world. And you know what? Light reflects the glory of God. Jesus also said, I am the light of the world. So this is the only place in Scripture where Jesus says the same thing about us that he says about himself. He said, I'm the light of the world. And then in Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount, he says, you are the light of the world. Now, how can we both be the light of the world? Well, because what he means by that is we are a reflection of him. Jesus is the sun, we're the moon. And the only time that we shouldn't, that we don't shine as believers is when the world gets in the way of us and the sun. And so when we call ourselves the light of the world, what it really means is that we are a reflection of the light of Christ. Now, having said all that, it's important for us to remember that as the salt and as the light, we're both ineffective unless we come into contact with exactly what we're supposed to be affecting. Salt in a box or salt left in the shaker does no good. And Jesus says in Matthew 5, if the salt loses its flavor, then it's worthless. It's like being trampled under feet. And what he means by that is, look, as the children of God, as his disciples, we need to be the salt of the earth in the sense that we are going out, not just staying in. It's good to get fellowship and hang out with other believers and enjoy your worship time on Sunday mornings. But folks, where it really matters is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in the office place. So as I close our little time together here today, let me just give you a couple of real practical ways that you can be the salt of the earth to your friends, to your family. When Jesus says you're the light of the world, he uses this metaphor, and he goes in three different stages. He says, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. And then he says, and then they put the light on the lampstand so it shines brightest in the house. He goes from the world to the city to the home. You know what? If you want to be salt of the earth and light of the world, start right there in your own household. So if you want to start by being salt of the earth, be a preservative in your home for truth. Be a fertilizer in your home. Make good things grow. love, peace, kindness, joy. And be a disinfectant in your home. Get rid of the bad stuff. So to be salt of the earth means that it starts right there at home. To be the light of the world, it starts right there at home by simply living your life every day for Him. And so when you go into the office place, when you go into the workplace, when you go into your neighborhood or whatever, through kindness, through love, through generosity, through peacemaking, through kind conversations, all of these things, you will discover that you make a difference in the lives of people. So when it comes down to it, being the salt of the earth and being the light of the world means that you're having great influence around those who don't know the Lord. And ultimately, that's our purpose for still being here.